Alafia kings and queens.
Yeah, greetings.
Greetings and welcome back to the Opportunity View. We are here today with our elder in our community. It's a pleasure for us to be joined by the great
Brother Zeno Constant. I think I just call your name wrong, remember telling you the name and nobody in figuring out who I'm talking about because his letters are twisted around now. But it's real good to have you here. Brother Zeno, what I would do, I would let you make an introduction of yourself and then we will get into the topic for today.
All right. Well, as a Calypso collector archivist on the one hand, as a playwright, artistic director on the next, but also is a kind of historian of the African struggle in Trinidad to some extent. When I got on the campus in late 70s, well, mid 70s, been introduced to the struggle at that time. And then I started to later on to document things. So I've documented some of the things in one or two books, articles, and so on. Right? So that's the three hats I kind of have, as playwright, as Calypso, all kind of thing, lecturer, Calypso lecturer in UWI, also archivist, and of course knowledgeable in the kind of, to some extent, in the Black War history of Trinidad. I don't say it all, but at least to some extent.
All right, so you see living version of Gayelle. Right. Today we wanted to talk a little bit about I think everything connected. And I like in your description of where it is do and who you is. Where you can hear you say Calypso historian, playwright, where it is bring forth some of the information, as well as African writing the African story in children and maybe to a certain extent. We wanted to talk a little bit about today is the effect of Calypso in African life in Trinidad and Tobago. Positive effects, how it helps people elevate, how it also tells stories. Again, just like on the Opportunity View, we do like the shushu. We are Calypsonians who didn't use the shushu. And they would have come and say certain things in form. And as I get older, I have a healthy respect for a Calypsonian to be able to write about what's going on. I think it really is simple. No, not really. But to actually sit down, watch what going in the country for a whole year, take a topic and write a whole story on it where you can hear what's going on. That's special talent. But to me, it also shows things now because when I think about singing Sandra voices in the right, never forget that song. And hearing it is paying certain things. Juke Black is beautiful, I mean. So we just wanted to...
Yeah. Well, let me just make a joke on the first thing you said is that I or George would not agree with you when you say is it the right hand. No, seriously, he had made that point years ago, right? He said the right Calypso and the right thing he been. Although in Iwa's case, since he is easily the best traditional Calypsonian of his posse, in other words, the soca stalwarts, Bungie, Maximus, Prime, etc., Fayan, whoever, Destra, Nadia, Iwa is the best writer of traditional Calypso of them all. And some people didn't realize that in his first decade, he wrote a number of Calypsos. He was in about 3 or 4 Young Kings. He was in the Calypso 10. So, but I just kind of aside because I think the Lamu had picked him up saying that he said the right hand and now do that, the Calypso. But to make the point, originally, in the early days of Calypso, back in the 19th century, for instance, the Calypso was more of a storytelling, documenting machine. Obviously, because it was what we had as opposed to what we didn't have. We didn't have mass media like now.
Right.
We didn't have that at your fingertips. So, for instance, in 1930, when Attila went to the cricket game in the Oval, the game finished 5 o'clock. 7 o'clock in the tent. He write a Calypso on that. But nobody else would know the results of the game, the scores and so on. Yet, because the newspaper ain't coming out till the next day. Now, but now, with these social media and instant news, the Calypsonian has a more difficult task, which is to keep me interested, even though I have the news already. So that's a shift, from basic news teller to somebody who must tell it in a particular way to still make it interesting, because there's no Calypso in the last decade that predates or comes before the actual news itself. News gone already.
Yeah.
Now, the Calypsonian then had to do that is one, but he was also a child of the Chantwell, of that African, of the Africans and them who used to tell these stories, right? I think according to my breads, Omari, the Jelly Man, right? The men who knew the history of the tribe, history of the nation, all the things. When we came here, that came with us. That ability to tell those stories, to keep it up. So they knew what they were doing, and in terms of that, they were also sending not only messages, but they were giving instructions to the people around them. In other words, instructions one of how to live, how to sit, how to stand, how to deal with man and woman, how to bring up children and so on. That's part of the whole original thing. But they were also telling that in terms of the slave experience, right? By singing certain things, they would tell you what coming, where to hide, etc. In America, where the parallel is there, what they used to call the Negro spirituals. Our partner named Eugene Bass is vexed when you hear that. You see, with African spirituals. Anyway, actually, those songs were actually messages to people during their attempt to escape and so on. When you hear "Swing Low, Sweet Chariot," there ain't no chariot coming alone. There's a song about, listen, this evening, Tom Man will pass, and you will hear the owl, and it's time to run. So the Calypso was like that, telling these stories. And if I want to say one more point on that, he was also keeping the colonial authorities honest, because he was there to sing about them and to bring them up and to pick them up and say, you can't do that. This is not what you're supposed to do. Now, unfortunately, let's make the last thing. Unfortunately, we don't have the Calypsos before 1940 because the recordings are there. I mean, we have one or two things written down and in books and things, right? So we don't know what happened in the first, let me say, in the 18th century, 1750, coming down all the way down. I mean, very little. Right? For instance, the Growling Tiger has a Calypso. Well, it's not much of a Calypso. He talks about some Africans on the ship coming across and what they were singing. And of course, they were singing something about a woman who was on the ship who asked them where they're going. And when they couldn't answer, she disappeared and gone back home. The flag on the ship was singing, yeah, Ame, yeah, Ame, in the same minor key that the early Calypsos had. But other than that, we had to wait until 1914 when we have the mass production of recordings to see what we had. So all of that, is the importance of the Calypsonian. to the society as a recorder, a documenting, as a messenger, as an instructor, as a warrior against the system, against during the Cambodian time and so on. A whole lot of roles he had to play within the society. And interestingly enough, he was looked on seriously. We'll come to the next point on that because I don't know about the power of the Calypso now. It seems to have a little bit of power. I can't figure out why, and maybe it had to do with something. Anyway, that's the next point. Before I talk too much on that one point.
I wanted to ask you, you think the Calypso is telling messages that still have a power?
Well, yes, they don't have the power as before. And I remember making a point some years ago about Kamala and saying, but if Kamala want to keep being quiet, all she needs to do is put money in soca and then do what they do with hip hop in America. You know what they do hip hop? Hip hop was message and warrior thing, and then they put all the money on gangster thing. And so we just put plenty money and hand in the air and do this because then we won't hear the Calypso. So it is potent, obviously. Right? What is happening though, the interesting point happening is that it seems that the soca is bringing back the messages coming around. In fact, in the last couple of years, I would think from 2019, you're seeing a lot of Israeli Calypso. Forget the rhythm. When you listen to Bungees the last 2 years, the struggle, for instance, and it's the Pretty, Orlando, even Voice, Urfam, a lot of others. In fact, in 2019, I was just going through my computer and looking at the songs, what they call the soca, and I found a lot of that have message. And I think the messages are there. So that might be a frightening thing that no matter what happened to the traditional Calypso, the soca is bringing it back with messages of love and war and a kind of newspaper too.
Yes.
Right? I can give you an interesting example on that. Let me give 2 examples. One is about Nadia. Nadia had a song about 3 years ago, I can't remember, called Skinner Park. I felt that the song did not make as good as was not as popular as it could be because it was caught between 2 worlds. The Calypso posse say, soca, I have no message for me now, we ain't listening.
Right.
And the soca posse say, but I Calypso, we are listening. Because she talks about the experience in this kind of park.
Yeah.
When she didn't want to go and she mother carry she to it and mother say you have to come and she said, but when Shadow come and sing and Chocolates come and sing and the dust raise, that is a Calypso. I want to give another example. My partner from Point, a real Calypso collector, Francis, I tell him when you're distributing the Calypso, play some of the modern ones because them soca that have messages really Calypso. So I make a LP for him, not a CD. Send it for him. But he ignored me. For some months after, he learned to his sister. And then he called me to ask me, this song, who's singing that? Is a song about minding your children. About when men make children, they should not go to court to mind the children. It was by Orlando.
Yeah.
It is the exact theme as Shadow's Mind Your Child, Karen Eccles, Mind Your Picnic.
Yes.
Same thing,
Yes.
but it's done in a soca thing, right? And in fact, if you listen to the Bungie Chromatics Outside Man, that is as potent as Duke singing Social Bacchanal.
True.
The same thing, or somebody singing the grand horn. That is a masterpiece, eh? I mean,
Yes.
them fellas are them quoting it in them terms, and we saying what that is.
Yeah.
So, Calypso is so important in the black community, but its potency is going down. But it's somewhere there. And if we look at Calypso, if we look at soca as just the new kind of Calypso.
Yes.
Yeah. Because remember, for 20 years, what we call soca, we now call Calypso from endless vibrations down to of the big truck. So wait a minute. Or we used to call that soca. Sugar Boom Boom, me love her, talk about this young generation say, but that's Calypso.
Yeah, true.
True.
Not really, it's the same thing because we call by a name and we assume that soca come from Mars. It's not true. Soca come out of the Calypso. And as the beat will change, I used to tell children all the time that one day your children will tell you, Ma, you listen to Bonji and Faye and that stupidness. It will change again.
Yeah,
And the new generation of them will say, what is that?
experience in it, yeah.
In fact, just to finish this point, just yesterday I listened to a Calypso by I think it's the Duke of Iron or Caressa. One of them. Bad talking jazz music in America and talking about Gillespie and them. What stupid fellow singing? That's not the real jazz. And I'm sure you know that experience in dancehall. And where's the real reggae? Come to that.
Yeah.
As it changed, people just panic and say, what are they listening to? And that's why a lot of times young fellas who have a little consciousness just laugh at the parent generation and say, well, they was listening to Shorty singing the art of making love and I was singing about pussy. How are they telling me they are singing these things? What they change. So that is generally, I think it loses potency. And one of the problems has to do with the competition because competition directs you in a particular direction. The form itself must follow what on the paper in front of the judges.
Right.
The form says, this is lyrics, and this is melody, and this is story, and you're following that. And therefore, it can direct the strength of what you're doing, which is why we often see Calypsos in the 10, getting 8 and Kwan can't make the semi-final. Or big Calypsos, Public is held by Shadow. Calypso by Valentino. Both Calypsos didn't make the finals, but came Song of the Year in the competition. So that that's 1 minute. So the whole number of other factors why it is going in that direction.
All right.
I mean,
So,
yeah. All right. Yeah. Sorry.
We take a break now. We'll be back in a couple.